Wolverine is a mutant with healing powers that give him the ability to regenerate his body. He can even regrow his entire body just from a few cells, as he has done in the past when his body has been burnt away till it was nothing more than a metal-covered skeleton, with a few cells inside of his bone marrow. Now, he has been shot, stabbed, burnt alive, been present at a nuclear bomb going off, and basically suffered every type of injury that a person can imagine. And yet, he is still fine. He even managed to survive having burning metal coated over his bones. Even someone with a healing factor shouldn't have been able to survive this, as the muscles, tendons and organs would no longer be attached to the bones, since the connections to them would have literally been burnt off, and then metal would have been put in the way so they could not reconnect. But Wolverine's body adapted to this and lets him not only live, but also have an indestructible skeleton as well. Some say this is because his true power is actually not to heal, but to survive, and so his body adapts to survive. But in any case, suffering all of these injuries should hurt in ways that we cannot even begin to imagine. But the truth is, Wolverine's pain response would actually be far less than a normal human's, to the point where he basically can't feel pain. And I'm going to explain how this works. Okay, first let's quickly go over how pain works. So our body gets injured and our nerves send signals to our brain, and then our brain sends a signal telling us the damaged area is in pain. And this is simply for survival. Our subconscious mind is telling our conscious mind to do something about the injury so we don't die. Now, a lot of people think that we have pain receptors in our body. This is actually not the case. Pain occurs entirely in the brain, nowhere else. We don't have any pain receptors. Our receptors can only sense heat and pressure. This info is sent to the brain, and then the brain decides whether this should be painful or not. And I know this because I actually have a health condition directly related to this. Well, I actually have several, but this is probably the worst one. You see, the pain center of my brain does not work correctly, and it basically never turns off. It sends out constant pain signals that put me in chronic agony. I'm only able to walk thanks to extremely large amounts of painkillers and pain blockers. And even then it hurts like hell half the time. Even though my body is not actually injured, it's just the area in my brain that is damaged. And I know all this because I've spoken to a lot of pain specialists, and I'm actually something of an amateur expert on the subject. Which is why I know that people who have healing factors would not actually feel pain. You see, pain is not entirely an automatic process. Our bodies aren't born feeling a set level of pain. We learn how much pain an injury merits as we grow up. This is why, as a child, when I was stung by netting needles, it would hurt for hours and be incredibly uncomfortable and painful. Whereas as an adult, I don't even notice when I get stung by stinging nettles. This is because I've learned that this injury is not dangerous and not a real threat to me. And when I say learnt, I don't mean that I've actually sat down and worked it out. That's not the type of learning. It's our subconscious experience things, and then as it experiences, it learns the level of pain. It's all done by our subconscious, but it is still very much learnt by our subconscious. And all of us have this. Any injury we've had when we were a child would hurt a hell of a lot more than getting the exact same injury as an adult. It's also why children can be distracted from pain quite easily. We all know what happens when a toddler trips or cuts themselves. It will look at the parent, or whoever the guardian is, and be ready to cry. But if you wave a toy in front of them, or smile, make a happy face and laugh, they become distracted and don't cry. I've done this many times with my nieces. And this is because without distraction, all their attention is on the injury. So their brain sends out crazy pain signals because it hasn't yet learnt if these injuries are serious or life-threatening. They're too young and haven't experienced it yet. The brain needs to experience injury in order to know how bad they actually are and how much pain they merit. Which is why when distracted, the pain hurts less and can be ignored. Because like I say, pain is not an automatic, set-level experience, it's something that we learn throughout our lives. It's also why people feel different levels of pain, even when they experience the exact same injury. Our experience with injury changes the way our brains understand pain. So in the case of Wolverine, yes, he would experience agony when he's stabbed, because he's still been injured. But since it can heal instantaneously, over time his brain would learn that this is not a serious injury, and it would send out smaller amounts of pain. Basically, the first time he gets stabbed, agony. The 100th time he gets stabbed, he'd barely even notice. Because his brain would learn through experience that these injuries are actually minor, at least for Wolverine. I mean, to the rest of us, being stabbed or shot is quite likely fatal. But to Wolverine, it's less than a small scratch on our arm, and his brain would learn to react accordingly. In fact, us getting a small scratch would hurt more and is actually more serious than Wolverine getting stabbed. He can heal that wound in a couple of minutes. For us, it will take a few weeks. So for him, it's just not that big a deal. Always remember, our minds continue to learn throughout our entire lifetime, and his is no exception. And it's for this reason that Wolverine would also have super strength, as a human body learns its limits over time. If I try to lift a car, it'll hurt like hell and I'll barely be able to make it budge, as my brain sends pain signals to let me know I am overexerting myself. So if I continue to try to lift the car, I will tear my muscles and rip my tendons, which for a normal human means you could be crippled for life. But since Wolverine can heal from these injuries in a matter of minutes, he wouldn't have the same limits that we have. He wouldn't have the same pain responses. He'd be able to lift extremely heavy things and have super strength, because he doesn't have to worry about pushing himself. He doesn't have to worry about getting injured. So he could easily lift 3, 4, 5 times as much as a normal person. Not to mention he's got a metal skeleton which is quite heavy, so he's probably getting quite a muscle workout just breathing. And how do I know this, you ask? Simple. We literally have real life examples. Well, not the metal skeleton, but for the rest of it. You see, people who are born unable to feel pain are capable of insane feats of strength because their bodies don't have any limits of pain. They just keep pushing. They literally can lift a car. Of course, they're still human, so they rip muscles and they rip tendons. But since Wolverine could heal from these injuries, he'd be fine. So he'd be able to do stuff like that casually. And these people who are born without the ability to feel pain are actually part of the reason that we know pain is entirely in the brain, as they are completely normal in their body's senses, but they are just missing that part of the brain that lets us feel pain. And that's why they can't feel it in the first place. Although before you get too envious, remember that these people break bones and injure themselves like crazy, as they do not understand their own body's limits, and as a result, they die quite young. I mean, if their appendix would have burst, they wouldn't even realise, so they'd carry on as normal and then drop down dead shortly after. Although personally, if I could trade places with them, I would. I mean, better not to feel pain and live than to always be in pain and never really getting to live. But then I'm more of a unique case, and I'm sure that most of you, the healthy ones among you at least, would much rather prefer to live a much longer life and just feel some pain along the way. But anyway, this is why Wolverine, and others with healing factors, would not actually feel pain, or at least they would not feel as much pain as a normal person. After all, having an arm torn off may still sting a bit, but it wouldn't be anything like what we would feel. I mean, it'd be much more akin to the pain we feel when we get punched in the arm, so still pretty low on the grand scheme of things. So I guess what I'm saying is, having a healing factor would be the greatest thing ever. No permanent injuries and eternal youth with enhanced strength and vitality. So yeah, it's a bit obvious it's an awesome superpower and we all want it. But still, when I realised that he would also not feel pain as well as being able to heal instantly, I had to make this video on it. Because I've actually read some bits in Wolverine comics where they go, it's not about being cut and healing that's difficult, it's about learning how to take the cut and learning how to heal when it heals off because it's painful, blah blah blah, manly, grr grr grr, I'm Wolverine. Okay, sorry, I got a bit unhappy about it there. Okay, maybe not exactly like that, but it does annoy me a bit that these writers are saying, yeah, there are downsides to it, they can still feel pain, when the science of the world actually says the exact opposite. So I had to make this video to set the record straight. But what do you think? Do you agree that Wolverine wouldn't be able to feel pain, along with other healing immortals who also wouldn't feel pain? Or do you think that this process would work a little bit differently? Well, if so, then give us your reasoning, as all current medical knowledge and logic does say that he shouldn't feel pain. And quite frankly, I'd love to know why you disagree with this. And I'd just like to quickly remind everyone that we have some merchandise available on our store, and to say thanks to all of you who have donated to the Needle Mouse Productions page on Patreon. And as always, thanks for watching, and feel free to subscribe, share, like, and comment.